Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now, guys? It felt like we were heading for one of those transfer windows, but in the blink of an eye, Celtic have went out and completely refurbished the goalkeeper department. We've brought in Kasper Schmeichel as a number one, and we've brought in a number two that is really going to push him and has some ambition to maybe become a Celtic number one himself in Sinisalo. But Brendan Rodgers and the transfer department at Celtic have wasted no time at all in turning their attention to the outfield squad, where we really do need to see some upgrades. We really do need to see some replenishment in the numbers and in the quality throughout the squad. And the transfers that have been earmarked, we all kind of felt that were going to happen, feeling like they're about to happen. Paulo Bernardo looks set to complete his return to Celtic after being on loan from Benfica last year. And similarly with Adam Idah from Norwich, it feels like that move is all but done at this point, with it moving at a faster pace. With Brendan Rodgers and Celtic wanting to have the core, the main body of the first team squad on the plane to America for as much of the pre-season tour as possible. And in the video today, we're going to have a look at the current standing, the current state of the depth chart with the Celtic squad going into the 24-25 season. Is bringing in Bernardo and Idah going to be enough to really help this squad move into the next level? And what business still needs to be done, incomings and outgoings? At any point in the video, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this as we cover all the moves for Celtic throughout the transfer window as we prepare for a massive 24-25 season here on the Celts Are Here channel, with match breakdowns and analysis, podcasts, updates on youth players and players we've got out on loan, giveaways, and really everything you could imagine from a Celtic YouTube channel. And get into the comment section on this one and let me know, Bernardo and Idah, is it a W? Is it an L? Is this good moves where we're really trying back, guys, try before you buy? Or is it lazy, kind of, deals we can afford, guys that are good enough, and we'll just about get us there? I'll be really interested to catch the comment section on this one. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it, because we actually have quite a bit to talk about. Although we don't actually have pre-season officially underway, we have had 2 pre-season games already where we've seen some of the returning faces from the first team squad already, as well as some of the guys that have been featured in the B team, the development squad, and some of them have had some minutes with the first team players in this kind of set, which is kind of normal for pre-season. And now when we come to look at the squad, there's a few new names, a few new faces that we can now add into the depth chart for where Celtic currently stand. We've not added in Bernardo or Idah just yet, because before we look at midfield and attack, I think the main thing that hasn't had any movement in it so far this window, that we've all got a bit of interest, we've all got a bit of intrigue in, is the Celtic defence. The goalkeepers we're not going to mention because we did that on the last video. If you missed it, I'll link it at the end of this one. But with the return from injury of Dane Murray, who we've seen feature against Queen's Park or Ayr United, I forget which one it is, we now have 7 centre-backs potentially in and around the first team. Welsh and Dane Murray, of course, being homegrown talents. And then with the likes of Lager Bielke and Yuki Kobayashi, who do feel surplus to requirements and might be on their way out. Really all we have in terms of established first-team centre-backs is Scales, who divides opinion, Rocky, who got injured again already, and Carter Vickers, who we all agree is the best centre-back at the club, but isn't without his own injury record. So the centre-back, jigsaw puzzle still has the pieces everywhere, and I don't think we're any closer to knowing what the solution is going to be for centre-back coming into the new season. I'm a big Liam Scales fan. I would have Liam Scales in the best 11 for this year and maybe focus some more of our attention and our resources into some other areas. But I know Scales, Naroki, Taylor at left back, these guys all divide opinion. And even, Taylor is really the only left back we've got. We're starting to see Mitchell Frame back from injury now, feature in the first team this pre-season. And Adam Montgomery is back at the club, although injured at the moment. So there might be some organic depth developing there. So it'll be really interesting to see how these guys do in pre-season. Could one of them, maybe Frame, become like the Liam Scales of this pre-season tour and maybe stand up as being someone who we can rely upon in the season going forward? So with the exception of Alistair Johnson, who I think everyone is just proud as punch with his Copa America semi-final, 3rd, 4th place playoff run with Canada this year, he does look like, between him and Ralston, it's the only area of defence where we're all quite comfortable with. We don't need to see any movements in or out. So still lots of work to be done in defence, because there's just a lot of bodies here, a lot of faces, and we know how tightly wound the Celtic finances are with the wage structure. So I think we're definitely going to need to see a little bit of outgoings before we get those incomings happening. Because you might think already with Bernardo and Idah on their way in, Quinny, we've not had any outgoings to really facilitate them, but you would be rather farther wrong, as you maybe know, obviously. O is away to Genk for £2.5 million with some add-ons and some sell-ons, which is cool. The Rocco Vata, will he stay, will he go thing is done. He's away now. He's away to Watford. We've got a couple of quid for that. Haksabanovic is away back to Malmo, away back to Sweden after a termination of contract kind of situation. And Giacomakis has left Atlanta United for Cruz Azul, and I think we've got a couple of quid in the sell-on fee for that. So Celtic have had a little bit of money trickle in already in this window for some tertiary players and some tertiary situations kind of locking in and filling the coffers. And it feels like that's the ammunition that we're using to go and strengthen the midfield. Because as we look at midfield here, it has some nice profiles in it. It has some players that we can have a bit of optimism and a bit of, optimism is probably the only word for it, that maybe they can develop this year and be better squad players than what they were last year, depending on some of the loan spells and whatever some of these guys have had. But with the exception of Tomoki Iwata, it feels like all of these kind of second string players, Odenholm, Boston Lawal and Kwon, are all relative unknowns. How useful can they be? Does the manager actually like them? We've got some really hard-hitting comments coming out from Rodgers, some good old 1990s, some good old 1980s motivation that talent isn't enough. We really need to see a bit more from both of these guys if they are going to be Celtic first-team players. And I do feel Odenholm showed some promise last year, but he did look a little bit of boy playing with men, in terms of his shooting ability from edge of the box and just really how strong he was in duels, shoulder to shoulder with some people. Whereas Kwon and Lawal haven't really had that problem, but maybe the problem or the missing piece of the puzzle for them is the top end, chance creation. Can they really go box to box? Can they affect the final third? Can they transition? Can they be progressive players that can fill up the attacking spaces and really keep on this style of play that we've had at Celtic for the last couple of years, where the likes of Rio Hatate can go forward and press with the front line, where Matt O'Reilly can be all things to all men in the attacking zone, doing his best Kevin De Bruyne impression, or being the kind of anchor man, doing the bit of the Rodgers where he can, pull the strings and orchestrate everything from deep, whilst having a deep line playmaker type player that is definitely not a defensive mid, but a guy that is going to move the ball from left to right, take up vital positions and try and cut off some passing lanes. And I do feel the addition of Paulo Bernardo definitely adds into the style, the profile of everything that we've got going on in midfield. And because of his previous track record as a Portugal youth international and with Benfica, before even his kind of audition season he had with us last year, this is a guy that has just a little bit more of the known quantity factor. So I do feel that Bernardo alongside Iwata is really the only genuine second string midfield that we have here. Kwon, Lawal, Odenholm, I do hold some hope for, but there's still big question marks and they are still really an unknown quantity for what we can expect to see and what level of reliance can we give them for the season ahead. But make no mistake about it, Paulo Bernardo is not a Matt O'Reilly doppelganger. He's not a Matt O'Reilly replacement, ready, willing and able to step into his void, to step into his shoes, should we sell him. Because Matt O'Reilly's had a lot of really interesting links across European football for the last 6 months. And for me, a lot of them have been very easy to rubbish on a lot of different levels. Whether it be something like Man United or Atletico Madrid, where it just doesn't feel like it's the right fit for the player. He might not get enough playing time, might not be playing time in the right kind of situation for him to continue his development across his career. But in the last month or two, we have seen some serious links come out of Italy, with Atalanta preparing a third bid for him as they look to replace Tune Koopmeiners, who are looking to sell to Juve for king's ransom, 50-60 million. They want to replace him with Matt O'Reilly. And that's a deal I could really see happening. Atalanta will be in the Champions League. They have the money to meet our demands, the transfer fee that we have. And with Koopmeiners leaving, O'Reilly will see himself going to Atalanta to be a first-team player in a top-4 team in Serie A. But quickly off the back of this, with Atalanta playing hardball with Juve on their valuations for Koopmeiners, Giantoli, the kind of head of transfers and whatever at Juve, is now kind of scratching his head and thinking, hold on, rather than buying Koopmeiners, why don't I just buy the guy from Celtic and you can keep Koopmeiners? Thiago Motta, don't forget, is the guy that brought Lewis Ferguson from Aberdeen to Bologna and really used him in that attacking midfield area, like O'Reilly would for a Juventus team or an Atalanta team. And Lewis Ferguson was one of the standout midfielders in Serie A last year. So I don't think, Juve, Thiago Motta would think twice about bringing a player from the Scottish League and playing him in Serie A. And if you've got the likes of Juventus and Atalanta offering potentially first team football, as long as you can make the step up that everyone expects they can, I think this will be too much for Celtic to keep a hold of Matt O'Reilly, and I do think that he will be leaving. Because there's some names that have been attached to Matt O'Reilly in this transfer window with some of the moves that, have been lined up for him. Arthur Vermeeren, Mats Wiefer, Koopmeiners. There's a lot of other players that, shared the spotlight with Matt O'Reilly in this transfer merry-go-round. That is the level, that is the quality of player that we are dealing with. And if we look at Matt O'Reilly's performances based on a scoring matrix of 0 to 100 over the last 40 games across all players in world football, he comes out number one. He is the number one all-action midfielder. Scores goals, makes assists, tackles, interceptions, wins his duels, creates big chances for his teammates, doesn't get booked too often. All the stats that you want, Matt O'Reilly has them in abundance. The only thing that kind of holds him back is he's been doing it for Celtic in the Scottish League versus doing it in the Serie A or in the Premier League or in the Argentinian League, which for some reason a lot of teams put a lot of faith and a lot of value in. And as you can see in this top five across world football, Jude Bellingham is in this list, Thiago Almada, Michael Olise, Bukayo Saka, Xavi Simons, guys that are elite performers. We even see former Rangers man who's now at PSV, Marek Tillman, get into this list. But this is the quality of midfielder that we have on our books, a guy that in our situation is just as productive as these guys are for their clubs in their situation. And this is the sort of quality that we'll be losing, and I can't stress enough what a massive hole that's going to leave in midfield. And we should really be looking at other players on this list that are just as prolific, just as valuable to their teams to come in and replace Matt O'Reilly in the same position. Some of these guys maybe are a wee bit more winger types. Some of them are maybe more defensive type midfielders. We need a guy that is firmly an attacking midfielder with a physical presence, but can do both sides of the game. And that is not Paulo Bernardo. It doesn't seem to be Quan. It probably won't be Lawal. I don't think it's going to be Odenholm. And really, I don't think we can rely upon that cohort, that contingent of midfielders to replace Matt O'Reilly when he does leave. We need to see an ambitious move, maybe similar to what we'll do in attack, to really fill the void that Matt O'Reilly will leave us. But my main worry if that happens is that Paulo Bernardo is the ready-made replacement for him, because he is not a Matt O'Reilly. He's not a guy that we can have pressing along the front line. I know we can do a lot of these things, right? But this is a guy that is generally a deep line midfielder. He's actually much closer to the style of player we expect to see from McGregor, but he is a bit more physically imposing. He's actually a bit more clean in the tackle, and maybe he would do a little bit better in this job than a Callum McGregor. That's my number one worry and concern with this deal. I didn't want us to pay 6 or 7 million. I'm really glad the club got it down under £4 million or €4 million, whatever it is. And I'm really overall happy with the addition of Bernardo, because I do feel that along with Iwata, on the premise that we keep O'Reilly, I do feel that this is a great 5-man midfield that we've got for an engine room to run across the league and the Champions League. But my number one worry, of course, is, like I mentioned already, is that O'Reilly does go. Now, what I hope happens, if anything, is that we do see a bit of a tactical development at Celtic, because Callum McGregor, as you definitely seen at the Euros with Scotland, you see it with us all the time when we play bigger opposition in the Champions League and whatever, but he is not an out-and-out defensive midfielder. If O'Reilly is to go, I would really hope that we would see McGregor maybe get back into this more number 8 position. Maybe Rio Hatate gets a bit more license to be that attacking front foot playmaker midfielder, and then someone like Bernardo or Iwata are kind of sharing the job of partnering McGregor in the engine room if we didn't go out and sign a further replacement. But I don't think bringing in Bernardo really cures all the problems that we've got here. It still is a very thin midfield on top level quality, and that's my number one concern with this, is just that Bernardo coming in, it'll make it easier for us to sell O'Reilly, and in the immediate term, yeah, I'm sure we'll be able to work something out and we'll do well enough domestically. But the Champions League stakes, if we don't have O'Reilly, we don't replace O'Reilly correctly, we're potentially making a huge backward step here. And the forward ranks at Celtic still has us all scratching our heads. On the left-hand side of the pitch, we've still got everyone's guy you love to hate, Luis Palma. Mikey Johnson's still here. He's probably going to be making his way back to the Championship in some way. We've still got Yang, who might get a loan, and then we've got Forrest and Kuhn on the right-hand side. So we've definitely still got plenty of wingers at the squad, but I don't think we've still even truly replaced Jota, and there's still a big, huge void for us to fill here, so that we know, not just for us as fans, but the team and for the stature of the club and everything, an established best 11 front three, because it does feel like Dyson and Kyogo are basically nailed on. And in the third spot, even looking at this, it is really really hard to make a solid case for any of them being out and out best 11 picks. But with O leaving, with Vata leaving, Kyogo's up here all by himself. Now, Dyson Maeda could be another forward option for us. He could be our kind of relief pitcher a little bit, as it were, if you can excuse my cross-sports analogies here. But we know we get the best Dyson out on this left-hand side, and I think this is his position to stay. But we do need another forward to come in here. Someone that knows the club, knows the role, will share with Kyogo, will start over Kyogo in the right games, and has that kind of balance and synergy. And Adam Idah, for me, is the number one candidate. I was really impressed with his loan spell last year, and with the actual goals he scored, the performances he showed on the pitch, I was really eager for Celtic to go and bring him back. But again, on the premise that the deal wasn't going to be taking up too much of our collateral, too much of our capital for this transfer window. But unfortunately, it feels like this deal, we will just need to pay what we need to pay. And I think for this instance, now that we've sold O, now that we've got Vata off the books, Giakoumakis, we've got a little sell-on fee for that. I think it makes it a bit of an easier pill to swallow, and I'm pretty excited to see this one come through. We still have a little bit of a gap here, but for that third choice striker, that Rocco Vata type guy who could be an organic player, a homegrown player that gets on the bench once in a while, maybe makes a couple of appearances in the league, can start a couple of League Cup games, maybe we see them show up in the Scottish Cup. So that's a little bit of an element that's still TBC. And really, when you look at the forward department here, it does feel like we've been really cheaping out over the last couple of windows, which is why I've been really excited with the recent links that we've had to Michel-Ange Balikwisha from Antwerp. This is a guy that for me is firmly in the Kyogo, is firmly in the Dyson category for profile of player number one, but number two, established kind of senior professional level of quality. This is a guy that if we do sign and bring into the club, it's very easy to see what type of player we're getting. He's already won the Belgian League, he's already played in the Champions League, and although we're not really fighting for his signature across, with lots of other clubs in this window, this is a guy that's had lots of really big interest over the last couple of seasons, and for one reason or another, it's not quite happened. So I think we could be really on to snapping a bargain here. Now, as you guys know, I love a ranking system from 0 to 100 that really does help show a player's true contribution, a player's true performances to any match or to the teams they play in, etc. And if we look at this list of top forwards across world football, you don't have to go too far before you see some of the biggest names in the game that have been really, blazing a trail this season, getting their name out there in a big way. Some lesser known guys, of course, but you don't need to scroll too far until we get to Michel-Ange Balikwisha, who is ranked over the last 40 games in all competitions as being a top 20 forward in world football. This is for goals, this is for assists, this is for all the stuff as well that has been the hallmark of really Dyson Maeda, Kyogo, Rio Hatate, the real energy that we've had in the front three. He's a real front pressing machine. But not just that, he is probably the most truly versatile forward, if we sign him, that we would have in the club, especially across those front three positions, the front three positions. His main position is on the left side of the pitch, but when playing on the right-hand side for Antwerp, he has been brutally effective. This is a guy that is very two-footed, so although a lot of his highlights that you've probably seen is him coming down the left and either swinging across him with the left or cutting inside and taking a cross or hitting a shot with his right hand, with his right foot. This is a guy that's just as comfortable at doing that on both sides of the pitch, whether it be youth international stage or whether it be domestic action in Belgium. And he's not featured too often on this side of the pitch, granted. But when you compare his performances on the right to on the left, there's not actually too much in it. It's not like Jota, it's not like Dyson, it's not like Abada, it's not like Kyogo, where if they're not playing in their best position, you don't get the same level of performance, the same sort of output from them. This is a guy that is just as viable, just as productive on the left as on the right as well. And I think on the wings is going to be the number one place that we look to deploy someone like Balikwisha if we were to sign him. But he is highly prolific through the middle as well. Having played for Antwerp and for his former club Standard Liège, in attack and as a pair, playing as two strikers up front, which is beautiful. He could also play in attacking midfield as well, a little bit deeper, playing off of a striker and then running on in and beyond. And again, this is a guy that gets goals. Yeah, there's a red card there as well. He gets assists, he scores goals, punches and bunches. Really, a really complete forward. Like I mentioned a moment ago, we have not signed a guy on this level since Dyson Maeda and Kyogo. Even Jota, when we signed him, didn't have this sort of track record, didn't have this sort of pedigree of being this prolific, this versatile, and this proven for the stage of the career where we've brought them in, and Jota cost us 6 or 7 million, you know. So if we can get someone like Balikwisha in on that sort of transfer fee, I think this would be a huge coup for the club. And like I say, in a front three, Balikwisha, Kyogo and Dyson, I think this would put a lot of fear into a lot of Champions League defences, which would be a very high energy front three. Dyson and Balikwisha can swap sides for 10 minutes just to wind people up and confuse them and all the rest of it. And maybe even if O'Reilly was to go, maybe he's a guy we could see playing in that centre position off of Kyogo, off of Adam Idah as well. So this is a move that I'm highly excited by. And I think once we've got Idah in, really, like, this really would, for me, put the attacking department right back on track since we lost Jota. And we really did try with Palma, with Yang, with Kuhn, with Mikey Johnson and Forrest. We really did try to do it as cheaply and as economically as possible. But it's good to see that enough is enough. Brendan wants absolute quality in. And if we do bring Balikwisha in, then on top of Adam Idah, then really for me, attacking options, we are set for next year. So once we've got this quality and this kind of strength and depth in attack for, you know, basically two to a position, and looking at the versatility of some of these guys, let's just take Mikey Johnson off so we think he goes. With some of the versatility that like Kuhn has, clearly Balikwisha has, Dyson has a little bit of it, Yang has a little bit of it. Really, like, I don't think on paper you could design and look at the profiles of, you know, like the attacking department is very well set. I think the numbers is definitely there for defence, but like we mentioned earlier in the video, the level of quality maybe still has a little bit left to be desired. And the midfield for me is really where I think now any considerable resources, capital, etc. has to be put in. We need to forward plan for O'Reilly's departure. And, you know, if that is, we're going to let McGregor come out and we're going to play Iwata, maybe we could then get another bit of reinforcements in for a proper defensive midfielder if that isn't already Paulo Bernardo or someone who's already one of the incumbent players at the squad. But I think now it is another top quality midfielder and we're still searching for another left back. And really, over the rest of this transfer window, 3 more incomings is all I would expect to see. We could probably expect to see a similar amount of outgoings as well. I'm really excited that we've got, it looks like we're going to get Adam Idah in. I'm quite happy that Paulo Bernardo's coming back because he has shown he can be an effective player domestically, certainly. And, you know, from here, it's onwards and upwards, really, as we get set for the Champions League. I'm looking forward to catching the comment section from you guys to see your thoughts and feelings on everything we've discussed in the video on screen and now with some other stuff that we've made here on the channel that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. If you did laugh, learn, or like something or whatever in this video, I hope you've hit that subscribe button for more content like this. Hail, hail, and I'll catch you on the next one.